Colonel Jake Martinez walked through the underground facility with purpose in every step. This place didn't officially exist. According to Galactic Council records, the mountain range in northern Canada contained nothing but mining operations and research stations. They had no idea that beneath 300 meters of rock, humanity had built something the Council would never approve of. The Special Operations Division headquarters was massive. Training rooms, weapon development labs, strategy centers, and barracks for over 10,000 soldiers. All of it hidden from alien eyes and sensors. Jake had been building this division for 8 years, carefully recruiting the best fighters humanity had to offer. He entered the main briefing room where his top officers waited. Commander Nicole Foster stood near the tactical display, her arms crossed. She was probably the best ship combat pilot in human space, with reflexes that bordered on supernatural. Lieutenant Sam Cooper was checking his data pad, likely reviewing demolition protocols for the 100th time. Captain Beth Andrews sat quietly in the corner, her sharp mind already running through battle scenarios. "Listen up," Jake said, and the room fell silent. "Protocol Wrath is active. The President just gave us authorization to use any and all assets to respond to the Vraxian attacks." "About time," Nicole muttered. "How many of our people do they get to kill before someone does something?" "No more," Jake replied firmly. The Council had their chance. They chose politics over justice. So now we handle it our way. He activated the tactical display and a massive ship appeared in holographic form. It was dark, angular, and covered in weapon systems, nothing like the smooth, elegant vessels the Council species preferred. "This is the Retribution," Jake explained. "The first of our Dreadnought-class warships. We've been building them in the Kuiper Belt for the past decade. The Council doesn't know they exist." Sam let out a low whistle. "That's a lot of firepower." "We have 12 ships like this," Jake continued, "plus 40 cruisers and 100 support vessels. All built for one purpose, war. Real war. Not the fancy diplomatic nonsense the Council calls peacekeeping." Beth leaned forward, studying the ship's specifications. "These use kinetic weapons. Railguns firing solid projectiles at near-light speed. The Council banned those weapons 3,000 years ago." "The Council isn't in charge of us anymore," Jake said. "We followed their rules, trusted their justice system. Look where that got us. Dead children floating in space." The room was quiet for a moment. Every person there had seen the footage from the Golden Promise attack. It was being shown on every human news channel, impossible to ignore or forget. "Captain Ryan Collins is commanding the Retribution," Jake said. "He's a good officer, fought in the Mars Independence conflict. Knows his tactics inside and out. The fleet is ready to deploy within 48 hours. Nicole stepped forward. "What's our mission objective, sir?" "Complete destruction of Vraxian military capability," Jake answered without hesitation. "We're going to hit every military installation, every warship, every weapon platform they have. We're going to remove their ability to hurt anyone ever again." "What about civilians?" Beth asked. "The Vraxian population didn't vote for this war. We avoid civilian casualties whenever possible," Jake confirmed. "This isn't about revenge against innocent people. This is about justice and making sure the species responsible can never attack helpless humans again." He changed the display to show current locations of Vraxian military forces. Red markers filled the map, concentrated around their core systems. "We also have intelligence operatives already in place," Jake added. "They've been there for years, working regular jobs, building cover identities. The Vraxians have no idea we've had people watching their military movements this whole time." Sam grinned. "So we'll know exactly where to hit them." "Exactly. No drawn-out conflict, no years of warfare. We go in hard and fast, cripple their military in days, not months." While Jake briefed his team on Earth, something else was happening at the Galactic Council headquarters. The massive space station orbited a neutral world, chosen specifically because no single species could claim it as their territory. Inside the Grand Council chamber, Ambassador Linda Hayes stood alone at the human podium. The chamber could hold representatives from over 300 species, though only about 100 were usually present for regular sessions. Today the room was packed. Everyone wanted to see what the humans would do now that the Council had dismissed their evidence again. The Vraxian ambassador, a tall creature with gray skin and too many eyes, spoke through his translator device. His voice came out in perfect galactic standard language, the trade tongue most species used for official business. "The human delegation continues to make baseless accusations," he said calmly. "We have explained that we had no military vessels in that sector. Perhaps these attacks were conducted by pirates or another species trying to frame us. Linda listened to this obvious lie with a face that showed nothing. She had been a diplomat for 15 years. Learned to smile and be patient even when dealing with fools and liars. But after watching recordings of dead children, after seeing the council do nothing while her people were murdered, something had changed in her. "Ambassador," she said, her voice cutting through the murmured conversations. "I have satellite imagery showing Vraxian military ships at both attack sites. I have weapon signatures that match Vraxian plasma cannons. I have communication intercepts proving your military command ordered these strikes." The Vraxian ambassador's translator made a sound like laughter, circumstantial evidence at best. The Thalaxian representative, a slug-like creature in a mobility tank, spoke up. The human colonies were established in contested space. Perhaps they should not have been there in the first place. Linda felt her hands clench into fists. Contested space. As if that justified murdering children. She looked around the chamber at all these species who called themselves civilized, who claimed to value life and peace. They were cowards, every one of them, comfortable and soft after thousands of years of living under council protection. "I see," Linda said quietly. "So the council's position is that human lives don't matter. That killing our civilians is acceptable as long as it happens in space you consider contested." Several representatives shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up to defend humanity. The council president, an ancient being from a species Linda couldn't even pronounce, raised one limb for attention. "The council has voted to issue a formal warning to the Vraxian Dominion," the president announced. "We find their actions concerning and request they exercise more caution in future military operations." A warning. Not sanctions, not punishment, not even a real investigation. Just a warning. The kind of meaningless statement that would be forgotten in a week. Linda took a deep breath. She thought about all the training she'd received in diplomatic protocol, all the rules about proper behavior and respectful communication. Then she thought about 73 researchers and 500 colonists who would never go home. "Then I have an announcement," she said, her voice clear and strong. "As of this moment, humanity is withdrawing from Galactic Council authority. We will no longer follow council regulations or submit to council oversight. We tried to be part of your community. We followed your rules. We trusted your justice system." She paused, looking directly at the Vraxian ambassador. "You failed us, so we will handle the Vraxian situation ourselves." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives from dozens of species started shouting at once, some outraged, some confused, a few actually laughing at what they saw as human arrogance. The Vraxian ambassador's translator crackled with what might have been amusement. "The human species threatens military action? Your fleet is designed for trade and exploration. We have warships that have kept the peace for millennia. If you attack us, the council will destroy you." Linda smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. "You have ships designed for peacekeeping and showing off. We have ships designed by a species that knows what real war looks like. You want to find out the difference? Keep threatening us." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the council descended into chaos, species arguing and demanding votes and trying to figure out what just happened. Linda didn't care anymore. She was done with all of them. In her private quarters on the station, she sent an encrypted message to Earth. The encryption was military grade, unbreakable by any council technology. The message contained only 2 words, but they would change everything. Unleash everything. On Earth, President Brooks received the message in her secure office. She sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the path they were about to walk down. There would be no going back after this. Humanity would either become a power that demanded respect, or they would be crushed by species that outnumbered them. But doing nothing meant more dead children. It meant accepting that human lives were worth less than alien politics. She opened a channel to United Defense Command, where Admiral Carter was waiting. "Admiral, you are authorized to deploy the fleet. Show them what we really are." "Yes, Madam President," Carter replied. "It will be done." Deep in the Canadian mountains, Colonel Jake Martinez received the order. He looked at his team, at the soldiers who had trained for years in secret. Captain Daniel Ross stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars streak past the windows. The Horizon's Edge was a good vessel, not fancy but reliable. Daniel had been flying trade routes between human colonies and alien stations for 5 years now. It was honest work, even if some of the alien species they dealt with looked down on humans. His second officer, Karen Blake, walked over with a data pad in her hand. She was young but sharp, always 3 steps ahead of any problem. "Captain, we just finished loading the supplies for New Seattle. We can leave whenever you're ready." Daniel nodded. "Good work. Tell Paul to fire up the engines. I want to get home before the weekend." Paul Mitchell was their engineer, a quiet man who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Down in the medical bay, Lisa Morgan was probably reorganizing her supplies for the 3rd time that week. She was the kind of doctor who worried about everyone, sometimes too much. The ship hummed to life beneath their feet. Daniel loved that feeling, the moment when a vessel became more than just metal and machinery. The horizon's edge jumped into faster-than-light travel, and New Seattle disappeared behind them. They were halfway to the colony when the emergency channel crackled to life. Daniel sat up straight, his relaxed mood vanishing instantly. Emergency broadcasts were rare, and they were never good news. "This is Research Station Delta on Kepler 442b. We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack. Unknown vessels are firing on our facility. We have civilians here, families with children. Please, someone help us." The voice cut off with a burst of static. Daniel's hands moved across the controls before he even thought about it. "Karen, get us to those coordinates now. Paul, I need every bit of speed you can give me." "On it, Captain," Karen said, her voice tight. The horizon's edge wasn't a warship. It had basic shields and maybe one old defensive gun that Daniel wasn't sure even worked anymore. But there were people dying, and they were the closest ship in range. It took them 20 minutes to reach Kepler 442b. 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Daniel's stomach turned to ice. The research station was destroyed. Pieces of it floated in orbit around the planet, twisted metal and shattered glass catching the light from the distant sun. There were no life signs, no survivors, no emergency pods, Captain. Lisa's voice came over the internal comm, shaky and quiet. "I'm reading 73 dead. That's everyone who was stationed there. The crew manifest shows 15 of them were children." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Karen was staring at the scanner display with a look of pure horror on her face. "There are weapon signatures all over the debris," she said. "Plasma burns, consistent with Vraxian military vessels. This wasn't pirates or an accident. This was a military strike. The Vraxians were members of the Galactic Council just like humans. They were known for being aggressive, always pushing into new territory and starting disputes with their neighbors. But attacking a research station? Killing children? That crossed every line the Council claimed to uphold. "Document everything," Daniel ordered. "Every scan, every piece of evidence. We're taking this straight to the Galactic Council." They spent 6 hours collecting data before heading back to Earth. Daniel barely slept during the journey. He kept seeing those numbers in his mind. 73 people dead, 15 children who would never grow up, never see Earth again, never do anything but become another statistic. When they reached Earth, Daniel went straight to United Defense Command headquarters. Admiral Joseph Carter met with him personally, reviewing all the evidence with a grim expression on his weathered face. "This is clear as day," the Admiral said. "The Vraxians did this. The Council has to respond," Daniel nodded. "When will they hold the session?" "Ambassador Linda is already calling for an emergency meeting. Should be within 48 hours. But 48 hours turned into a week. The Galactic Council moved slowly, they said. They needed to be thorough, they said. They couldn't rush to judgment without proper investigation. Daniel watched the news broadcasts from his small apartment in Chicago. Political analysts talked about galactic relations and diplomatic processes. None of them seemed to care about the 73 people who were dead. None of them seemed angry enough. Admiral Carter brought the evidence to President Helen Brooks. She was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been pushing for human independence from council oversight since her election 3 years ago. The other council species thought she was too aggressive, too confrontational. They preferred humans who smiled and agreed with everything. "They're stalling," President Brooks said after reviewing the data. "The council has no intention of punishing the Vraxians. They see us as newcomers, less important than species who have been members for thousands of years." "Madam President, if they don't act," the Admiral began. "They won't," she interrupted. "I know these politicians. They'll issue a statement of concern and do absolutely nothing." She was right. 2 weeks after the attack, the Galactic Council finally held their session. Ambassador Linda presented all the evidence. The Vraxian representative, speaking through a translator device, called the incident regrettable, but denied any military involvement. He suggested that perhaps pirates had used stolen Vraxian weapons. The council voted to form an investigation committee that would report back in 6 months. 6 months to investigate something that was already proven. It was an insult. Daniel heard about the verdict while eating dinner at a small restaurant near the spaceport. He lost his appetite immediately. Around him, other humans were getting the same news on their personal devices. The mood in the room shifted from casual conversation to quiet, simmering anger. That anger turned into horror 3 days later when another attack happened. The civilian transport Golden Promise was carrying colonists to a new settlement in the outer territories. 500 people were on board. 200 of them were children. The ship sent out a distress call, reporting Vraxian vessels attacking them without warning or provocation. Then the signal went dead. When rescue ships arrived 6 hours later, they found debris and bodies. No survivors. Not one. The evidence was even clearer this time. The Golden Promise had been recording everything. The data showed Vraxian military ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, targeting the defenseless transport, and destroying it completely. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was murder. Daniel watched President Brooks address the human population that evening. She stood behind a podium, her face calm but her eyes burning with controlled fury. "We brought this evidence to the Galactic Council again," she said. "We showed them recordings. We gave them names of the dead, ages of the children killed. Do you know what they said? They said there wasn't sufficient evidence. They said we should wait for the investigation committee to finish their work." She paused, and in that silence, Daniel felt something shift in the air. It was like the moment before a storm breaks, when everything goes quiet and still. "The Galactic Council has failed us," President Brooks continued. "They have failed the 73 researchers on Kepler 442b. They have failed the 500 colonists on the Golden Promise. They have failed every human who trusted them to uphold justice and protect the innocent." Another pause. Daniel leaned forward, hardly breathing. "Today, I am authorizing Protocol Wrath. 50 years ago, when we joined the Galactic Council, we hoped we were joining a community of civilized species who valued life and justice. We were wrong, so now we will handle this ourselves. We will show the galaxy what happens when you murder our people and face no consequences. We will show them what humanity really is." The broadcast ended. Daniel sat in the darkness of his apartment, his hands shaking. Protocol Wrath. He had heard rumors about it, whispers among military personnel. Some said it was just a contingency plan, a way to protect human colonies if the Council ever turned against them. Others said it was something much bigger, something the Council would never see coming. Daniel's personal comm device buzzed. It was a message from Admiral Carter. Short and simple. "All civilian ship captains with military experience report to United Defense Command. Volunteer basis. We're going to need everyone." Daniel looked at the message for a long moment. Then he stood up, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the door. He thought about the research station, about the floating debris and the 73 dead. He thought about the children on the Golden Promise who never got to live their lives. The Galactic Council had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The Vraxian Defense Fleet detected the human ships as soon as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, at the edge of Vraxian space. Warning alarms sounded across every military station, and commanders scrambled their forces to intercept what they assumed was a small, desperate attack force. Fleet Commander Zrath examined the scanner readings from his flagship. He counted only 12 large vessels and maybe 40 smaller ones. His fleet had 300 ships. The odds were laughably in his favor. These humans clearly didn't understand military strategy. "Prepare to intercept," he ordered. "Standard formation. We will disable their vessels and take survivors as prisoners. The Council will want to make an example of them." On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Ryan Collins watched the Vraxian fleet moving to surround them. He had studied the Vraxian military for years, read every report about their tactics and capabilities. They fought like species who hadn't faced real warfare in millennia. Predictable, slow, overconfident. "Tactical, what's the range to target?" Ryan asked calmly. 400,000 kilometers in closing, sir," his tactical officer responded. They're forming an envelopment pattern, trying to surround us. Ryan smiled slightly. Let them. Helm, maintain current heading and speed. Weapons, charge the main batteries. Sir, they're firing, Tactical reported. Bright purple energy beams lanced across space, striking the Retribution's shields. The ship shuddered slightly, but the shields held easily. The Vraxian weapons were designed to disable other Council ships, which used similar technology. Human shields were built on completely different principles, designed to withstand sustained bombardment. Shields at 98%. The engineering officer called out. Those weapons barely touched us. Return fire, Ryan ordered. All batteries full spread. Target their capital ships first. The Retribution's railguns fired, and the difference was immediately obvious. Instead of colorful energy beams, the human weapons launched solid projectiles accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Each projectile weighed several tons and carried kinetic energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The first Vraxian battleship exploded. Just exploded, torn apart by a projectile that punched through its shields and hull like they weren't even there. Then the second ship died, and the third and the fourth. Within 30 seconds, 10 Vraxian capital ships were destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Fleet Commander Zarath stared at his display in shock. What are those weapons? How did they penetrate our shields? His science officer's voice shook. Commander, they're using kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds. The shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid matter moving that fast. Evasive maneuvers, Zarath shouted. All ships scatter formation. But scattering just made them easier targets. The human fleet split into smaller groups, each one moving with precision and speed that shouldn't have been possible for vessels that large. Nicole Foster led a squadron of cruisers that tore through the Vraxian left flank, her ships dancing between enemy fire like they were performing a deadly ballet. Commander Nicole had trained for this her entire career. While the Council species had become comfortable and lazy, humanity remembered what it meant to fight for survival. Every human pilot knew that in real combat, hesitation meant death. Target the ship trying to flank us, she ordered her squadron. Fire on my mark. 3 human cruisers fired simultaneously, and another Vraxian ship became expanding debris. Nicole's tactical display showed the enemy fleet breaking apart, ships fleeing in different directions as their commanders realized they were being slaughtered. On the Vraxian flagship, Fleet Commander Zarath finally understood the terrible mistake his government had made. These weren't peaceful traders and explorers. These were warriors from a death world, a species that had survived on a planet that constantly tried to kill them, and they brought all that savage experience to space warfare. Send a message to the Council, he ordered desperately. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them the humans have weapons that... A railgun projectile struck his ship's bridge. Fleet Commander Zarath and everyone else in the command center died instantly. The flagship broke apart, secondary explosions rippling through its hull. The Battle of Vraxian Border lasted exactly 22 minutes. When it ended, 214 Vraxian ships were destroyed. The rest had jumped into faster-than-light travel, fleeing in panic. Not a single human vessel had taken critical damage. Captain Ryan stood on his bridge, watching the debris field spin slowly in the darkness of space. He felt no satisfaction, no joy in the victory. This was necessary, but that didn't make it pleasant. Casualty report, he said quietly. Minor injuries only, sir. No fatalities on any of our ships, Ryan nodded. Send the combat data back to Earth, then proceed to the next target. We're going after their military installations. Back on Earth, Daniel Ross watched the battle footage with the rest of his crew. They were at United Defense Command headquarters, having volunteered to join the military fleet. The footage showed Vraxian ships exploding one after another, completely outmatched by human weapons and tactics. That was barely even a fight, Paul said, his engineer's mind analyzing what he was seeing. Their shields couldn't stop our weapons. Their ships couldn't maneuver fast enough. They were shooting at where we had been, not where we were. Karen looked troubled. I know they killed our people first, but this feels wrong. We're destroying them. They murdered children, Daniel said flatly. They attacked civilian ships with no defenses. And when we asked for justice, the Council laughed at us. I don't feel sorry for them. Lisa, always the most compassionate member of the crew, shook her head. I don't feel sorry for their military, but there are civilian Vraxians who had nothing to do with this. We need to remember that. Admiral Carter entered the briefing room where they waited. Captain Ross, your ship has been retrofitted with military-grade shields and weapons. You and your crew are assigned to Strike Force 7. We're hitting Vraxian supply depots and command centers. Are you ready? Daniel looked at his crew. Karen nodded firmly. Paul gave a thumbs up. Lisa took a deep breath and agreed. They had been together for years, survived storms and accidents and near disasters. They would survive this too. We're ready, Admiral. At the Galactic Council headquarters, emergency sessions were being called every few hours as news of the human attack spread. The council chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, demanding action, making threats, proposing solutions that contradicted each other. The Vraxian ambassador was gone, having fled back to his homeworld when the fleet was destroyed. In his place, a junior diplomat stood trembling at the Vraxian podium, trying to explain how their entire border defense force had been eliminated in less than half an hour. The council must respond, the Thalaxian representative demanded. The humans have committed an act of war against a council member. We must assemble a joint fleet and force them to surrender. Several other species agreed loudly. The Crothian Empire's representative, battle leader Thorax, slammed his armored fist on his podium. The Crothians were a warrior species, one of the few council members who actually maintained a real military. The humans have shown their true nature, Thorax growled. They are dangerous predators who cannot be trusted. We must strike them down before they threaten other species. The council president tried to restore order, but the chamber remained chaotic. Finally, High Speaker Verum of the Zelthian Concordat stood, and something about her presence made others fall silent. The Zelthians were an old species, wise and generally respected for their fairness. Perhaps, Verum said carefully, we should ask ourselves why this happened. The humans came to us with evidence of attacks on their people, clear evidence, recordings, weapon signatures, everything needed for justice. And what did we do? Silence fell across the chamber. We dismissed them, Verum continued. We told them to wait, to be patient, to trust the process. Meanwhile, more of their people died. We failed in our most basic duty to protect member species from aggression. That doesn't justify what they've done, the Thalaxian representative protested. Doesn't it? Verum challenged. If another species attacked Thalaxian civilians and the council refused to act, would you wait patiently? Or would you defend your people? More silence. Several representatives looked uncomfortable. The humans are not the victims here, Thorax insisted. They deployed weapons banned by council law. They attacked without council authorization. They must be punished. Then we should assemble the fleet, another representative suggested. Show them they cannot defy the council. Verum shook her head slowly. Did you see the battle footage? The humans destroyed our best military fleet in minutes. Their technology is decades ahead of ours in weapons development. Their tactics are from a species that understands warfare at a level we cannot match. And you want to attack them? We have numbers, Thorax argued. The combined council fleet has over 1,000 ships. Even with superior weapons, they cannot stand against those odds. Can't they? Verum asked. I wonder. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the council voted. 3 species, led by the Crothian Empire, would assemble a joint fleet. They would proceed to human space and demand surrender. If the humans refused, they would be forced to comply. The joint council fleet assembled at a neutral staging point, far from both human and Vraxian space. Over 300 vessels from multiple species gathered together, the largest military force the council had mobilized in over 1,000 years. To the species involved, it seemed unstoppable. Battle leader Thorax commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive Crothian dreadnought called the Spear of Justice. The Crothians were proud warriors who believed in strength and honor. They saw the human actions as a challenge to council authority that could not go unanswered. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. We have 312 vessels total. Crothian, Thalaxian, and Vexer forces all integrated into the battle formation. Thorax nodded with satisfaction. Then we proceed to Earth. When the humans see this fleet, they will have no choice but to surrender. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, heading for the human homeworld. It would take them 3 days to reach Earth, plenty of time for Thorax to plan the occupation. He would be fair but firm. The humans needed to learn their place in the galactic order. On Earth, Admiral Joseph Carter stood in the command center, watching the scanner displays that tracked the incoming fleet. He had known this was coming. The Council couldn't let humanity act independently without some kind of response. But he had also prepared for it. "What's our defensive readiness?" he asked his staff. "All orbital defense platforms are active and fully armed," Commander Drake replied. She was the Admiral's second in command, a woman who had spent 20 years in military service. "The defensive fleet is positioned around Earth and the Moon. Every ship is ready." "Good. What about the colonies?" "Protected. We have enough forces at each major colony to defend against attack." President Helen Brooks entered the command center, her security team following close behind. She looked tired but determined. The weight of leading humanity through its first real war was heavy on her shoulders. "Admiral, have we heard anything from the Council fleet?" she asked. "They sent a message 3 hours ago, demanding our immediate surrender and the return of all military vessels to Council oversight. They also want the officers responsible for the Vraxian campaign to face trial for war crimes." Helen laughed, though there was no humor in it. "War crimes. They ignore the murder of our civilians, but when we fight back, suddenly we're criminals. That's politics, Madam President." "Yes, well, I'm done with their politics." She looked at the tactical display showing the incoming fleet. 300 ships. "That's a lot." "It is," Carter agreed. "But they're not prepared for what we can do. Their ships are designed for peacekeeping and trade protection. Ours are designed to kill." In New York, engineer Kevin Price organized civilian defense efforts. He wasn't military, just a regular person who wanted to protect his home. Thousands of people like him volunteered to help in any way they could. They built emergency shelters, organized supply chains, prepared medical facilities. "We're not going to let them take Earth without a fight," Kevin told his team. "Our military will handle the fighting, but we need to make sure everyone else stays safe." In Beijing, scientist Dr. Amy Liu worked with military engineers on experimental weapon systems. She had been developing new shield technology that could potentially deflect even kinetic weapons. The military wanted it deployed on key defense platforms before the Council fleet arrived. "Will it work?" the military liaison asked her. Amy shrugged. "Probably, maybe. We haven't had time to test it properly. But if it does work, it could make our defenses much stronger." "Deploy it," the liaison ordered. "We'll take any advantage we can get." Across Earth and its colonies, billions of humans prepared for war. They weren't professional soldiers, most of them. They were teachers and doctors and engineers and farmers. But they were all human, and humans had a long history of defending their homes against overwhelming odds. The Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Battle leader Thorax immediately saw that the humans had prepared a defense. Dozens of ships were positioned around Earth in careful formations. Defense platforms orbited the planet, bristling with weapons. "They mean to fight," his tactical officer said, surprised. "So they are fools as well as criminals," Thorax replied. "Send the surrender demand one final time. Give them a chance to see reason." The message was transmitted. Admiral Carter received it in the command center and deleted it without even reading the full text. "Open a channel to all our ships," he ordered. "Let me speak to every captain." The channel opened. On bridges across the human fleet, officers and crew listened as their admiral's voice came through clear and steady. "Today we defend our home," Carter said. "The Council has decided that our lives don't matter, that we should accept the murder of our people without complaint. They come here with threats and demands, expecting us to bow down and obey. But we are human. We don't bow. We don't surrender. We protect what is ours." He paused, looking at the tactical display. "These ships coming at us, they're used to easy victories against pirates and criminals. They've never faced a real military force. They've never fought someone who fights back hard. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Show them what humanity really means." On the Retribution, Captain Ryan Collins heard those words and felt pride swell in his chest. Around him, his crew prepared for battle with calm efficiency. They had already proven themselves against the Vraxians. Now they would prove themselves against the entire Council. "All weapons charged," Tactical reported. "Enemy fleet is moving into attack range." Ryan watched the Council ships advance in their neat, organized formation. They moved like ships on parade, pretty and impressive but ultimately vulnerable. "Wait for it," he said calmly. "Let them get close." The Council fleet opened fire first. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space with color and light. The human shields absorbed most of it, though a few hits got through and caused minor damage. "Nothing critical. Return fire," Ryan ordered. "Focus on the capital ships. Break their formation." The human fleet responded with devastating effect. Railgun rounds tore through council ships like paper. The Crothian dreadnought took 3 hits and lost its entire starboard side. Thalaxian cruisers exploded in brilliant flashes. Vexor destroyers tried to scatter but were picked off one by one. Battle leader Thorax watched his fleet being torn apart and couldn't believe what he was seeing. His flagship was dying around him, systems failing, crew members screaming over the comm channels. This was supposed to be a simple show of force. Instead, it was turning into a massacre. "All ships, break off," he ordered desperately. "Retreat, retreat." But retreating from human ships was easier said than done. Nicole Foster led her squadron in a pursuit, cutting off escape routes and destroying ships that tried to flee. Her piloting was brilliant, her tactics merciless. Daniel Ross and his crew on the Horizon's Edge fought alongside the military vessels. They weren't the biggest or most powerful ship in the fleet, but they did their part. Karen called out targets, Paul kept the engines running far beyond their supposed limits, and Lisa prepared to treat any wounded. "Target that cruiser trying to flank the defensive platform," Daniel ordered. Their weapons fired, not as powerful as a military ship, but accurate. The Council cruiser took damage and veered off, smoke pouring from its hull. The battle lasted 6 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 20 minutes. The Council fleet was simply outmatched. Their superior numbers meant nothing when human weapons could destroy their ships with single shots, and human tactics kept them constantly off balance. In a desperate move, Daniel saw a wounded Council ship trying to ram one of the orbital defense platforms. The platform had thousands of civilians sheltering inside. Without thinking, he pushed the Horizon's Edge into the ship's path. "Daniel, what are you doing?" Karen shouted. "We can't let that ship hit the platform," he replied, his hand steady on the controls. "Paul, divert all power to the forward shields." "This is gonna hurt." He activated the faster-than-light drive at point-blank range, something no sane pilot would ever do. The space around his ship twisted and bent, creating a massive disruption in the fabric of reality. The effect caught the Council ship in a wave of distorted spacetime, tearing it apart. But the Horizon's Edge took terrible damage. The ship shook violently, systems exploding, hull breaching in 3 places. Emergency alarm screamed and the lights went out. "Engineering to bridge," Paul's voice came through, barely audible over the noise. "We're venting atmosphere from multiple sections. Main power is gone. I'm trying to keep us on emergency power, but I don't know how long it will last. Get us to the nearest repair station," Daniel ordered. "Karen, navigate us there on manual controls if you have to." Lisa was already moving through the ship, checking on crew members, administering emergency medical treatment to those who were injured. The Horizon's Edge limped toward safety, barely holding together. On the Crothian flagship, battle leader Thorax made a decision that went against everything his warrior culture believed in. "Signal the retreat. All remaining ships withdraw from the system." "Commander, that would be dishonorable," his tactical officer protested. "Staying here and dying for no reason would be stupid," Thorax replied. "Look at our losses. Over 100 ships destroyed." News of the Battle of Terra spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had been part of the Council for thousands of years watched in shock as footage showed human ships destroying the joint fleet. The impossible had happened. A single species, newer to the galactic community and supposedly inferior, had defeated the combined military might of 3 Council members. On the Vraxian homeworld, massive protests filled the streets. Civilians who had known nothing about their government's attacks on humans now saw the truth. Their military had murdered children, and when humanity fought back, they had been crushed completely. The Vraxian people were horrified. A civilian named Krex watched the protests from his apartment window. He had lost his brother in the human counterattack, a military officer who died when his ship was destroyed. At first, Krex had been angry at the humans. Now, after learning what his government had done, he was just ashamed. The Vraxian military government collapsed within a week. The generals who had ordered the attacks were arrested by their own people. A new civilian government formed, and their first act was to send a message directly to Earth, bypassing the Galactic Council entirely. President Helen Brooks read the message in her office. It was an unconditional surrender, an admission of guilt and a request for peace terms. The new Vraxian government wanted to make things right if humanity would allow it. Helen called Admiral Carter and Ambassador Linda to discuss the response. They met in the secure conference room, along with several other advisors. They're offering complete surrender, Helen said. What do you think? We could demand anything we want, Carter replied. Reparations, territory, military restrictions. They have no leverage at all. Linda leaned back in her chair, thinking, the question is, what kind of galaxy do we want to create? We've proven we can destroy anyone who threatens us. But do we want to be conquerors? Or do we want to show that humanity can be merciful as well as dangerous? Helen nodded slowly. If we're too harsh, we create enemies forever. If we're too soft, we look weak and others might test us later. Then we find the middle ground, Linda suggested. Strict conditions, but not impossible ones. Show strength, but also show we're capable of forgiveness when people genuinely seek it. They spent hours drafting the terms. Finally, Helen transmitted them to the Vraxian government. The conditions were clear. The military leaders responsible for the attacks would face trial for war crimes. Families of human victims would receive compensation. Vraxia would undergo complete demilitarization, reducing their military to a small defensive force. In exchange, humanity would help rebuild the Vraxian economy and would not pursue any revenge against civilians. The Vraxian government accepted immediately. They had expected much worse. At the Galactic Council headquarters, an emergency session was called. The chamber was more packed than anyone had ever seen it. Over 200 species attended, all wanting to understand what had just happened and what it meant for the future. High Speaker Verum of the Zelthian Concordat stood at her podium and called for order. When the room finally quieted, she spoke with the authority that came from being one of the oldest and wisest species in the council. The system we have relied upon for millennia has failed, she said bluntly. We failed the humans when they asked for justice. We failed the Vraxians by not stopping their aggression sooner. We failed ourselves by becoming complacent and weak. Murmurs filled the chamber, but no one interrupted her. Humanity has shown us something important, Verum continued. They showed us that real strength isn't about having the most ships or the oldest civilization. Real strength is about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The Thalaxian representative spoke up. Are you suggesting we should follow the example of these violent Deathworlders? I'm suggesting we learn from them, Verum replied. The humans came to space hoping to find enlightened species who valued justice and peace. Instead, they found us. Politicians more concerned with maintaining comfortable systems than actually helping people. Ambassador Linda entered the chamber, and every eye turned to her. She had been away from the council station during the Battle of Terra, but now she had returned with a proposal. The Galactic Council as it exists is broken, Linda announced. It failed humanity, and it will fail other species in the future if nothing changes. So I propose we create something new, something better. She activated a holographic display showing a new organizational structure, the New Galactic Coalition. Every member species gets an equal vote, regardless of how old they are or how long they've been members. Military action requires a supermajority approval, and most importantly, we create a real peacekeeping force, not just ceremonial defense fleets. Who would command this peacekeeping force? Someone asked. Representatives from multiple species with rotating leadership, Linda explained, trained by military professionals from various backgrounds, including human trainers who actually understand modern warfare. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the idea immediately. Others were outraged at the thought of humans having influence over galactic security. But slowly, over hours of discussion, a consensus began to form. The council was broken. Everyone could see that now. If they wanted to survive, they needed to change. Not everyone accepted the new reality peacefully. The Crothian Empire, humiliated by their defeat at Terra, refused to recognize the coalition. Battle leader Thorax had survived the battle and returned home to face questions from his superiors about how he lost so badly. The Crothian High Command called for a meeting with humanity. They wouldn't bow to the new coalition, but they also couldn't ignore the species that had destroyed their fleet. Admiral Carter volunteered to lead the diplomatic mission, bringing Colonel Jake Martinez and Captain Ryan Collins with him. They met on a neutral station, in a conference room designed to accommodate different species. The Crothian High Commander was a massive creature covered in thick armor plates, with multiple limbs and eyes that seemed to see everything. You defeated us in battle, the High Commander said through his translator. This is undeniable, but the Crothian Empire has never surrendered to anyone. We will not start now, Carter nodded. We're not asking you to surrender. We're asking you to join us in building something better than the old council. Why should we? Because you're warriors, Carter replied. Real warriors, not politicians pretending to have military power. The galaxy needs warriors, but it needs them protecting people, not serving corrupt systems. The High Commander's translator made a sound that might have been skepticism. You want us to be peacekeepers? We are conquerors, Jake spoke up. The greatest warriors fight for something bigger than themselves. Any fool can destroy. It takes real strength to protect. The Crothians considered this. Their culture valued honor and strength above all else. Being offered a role as protectors, recognized as true warriors by the species that had defeated them, meant something. We will consider your proposal, the High Commander finally said. If we join this coalition, we will not be subordinates. We will be partners. That's all we're asking, Carter agreed. The Crothian Empire joined the new Galactic Coalition 3 weeks later. Other species followed. Not everyone joined immediately, but the momentum was building towards something new. 6 months after the Battle of Terra, the coalition held its first official assembly. Over 100 species attended, including humans, Vraxians, Zelthians, and Crothians. The old council chamber had been redesigned with equal podiums for every species. No one placed higher than anyone else. President Brooks gave a speech at the opening ceremony, transmitted across the galaxy. We came to space hoping to find peace and justice. When we didn't find it, we could have become conquerors. We could have used our military power to dominate others. Instead, we chose to build something better. The new Galactic Coalition represents what we believe in: equality, justice, and protection for all species. On Earth, Daniel Ross recovered from his injuries in a medical facility. The Horizon's Edge had been badly damaged when he used the faster-than-light drive as a weapon, but his crew had survived. Karen visited him every day, bringing news and updates. Paul was already working on rebuilding the ship. Lisa had been awarded a medal for her medical work during the battle. What are you going to do when you heal? Karen asked. Daniel smiled. Get back on my ship. The coalition needs merchants and traders. Someone has to move supplies between all these species. Same old Daniel, Karen laughed. Almost dies saving a space station and can't wait to get back to work. It's not just work anymore, Daniel replied. We're building something important. I want to be part of it. At Coalition headquarters, Ambassador Linda worked with representatives from dozens of species to write the Coalition Charter. It was hard work, full of compromises and debates, but it was also hopeful. The Vraxian ambassador, young Krex, who had lost his brother to the war, became one of her closest allies. Do you think this will last? Krex asked her one day. Or will the coalition eventually become just like the old council? Linda considered the question. That depends on us. On whether we remember why we created it in the first place. The old council forgot that their job was to protect people, not maintain power.